Hey everybody, welcome to my workshop here in Axminster, proudly supporting the Woodturning Store. Today we're just doing a little project to show you some of the jaws that I use fairly frequently. I have done this demonstration before. I've done it in various platforms, but I don't think I've ever done it here. So I just wanted to show you a few things. So we're looking at three jaws in particular. So this is a relatively small project, but we're able to show and demonstrate all those three jaws. I'm actually using an SK114 here. We're going to be doing one of these little pendants. So I've got Steph behind the camera. She'll be asking questions. So there we are. There's one of those little offset pendants. So it's basically how we go from a raw bit of timber to a nice little offset. And I'm planning on making two for you today. So one, I want to say plain timber, but it's not plain timber in any way at all. And then a resin hybrid, so resin and timber hybrid blank. And I'll go through all of the process as I normally do. And we'll start right at the beginning with the O'Donnell jaws. This is the 112s, so the middle size of the O'Donnell jaws. I've got a beautiful piece of, this is actually snake wood. You can't really, well, yes, you can. You can see some of the mottling there. It's a stunning timber, quite a precious timber, very, very dense. So we're going to do one of those, excuse me, one of those, and a little resin. And this is actually walnut or sapwood walnut resin blank there. So we'll do a little a variation of the two. We're going to sand them in slightly different ways, so finish them in slightly different ways, and just because of the density, slightly different as well. So look, 114, O'Donnell 112s. We're then going to go to a set of wood plate jaws. We're then going to use some soft jaws. So we've got a good variation to do. We've got to think about how we're going to offset the jaws, for instance, or how we're going to offset the hole in the center. So we're going to look at everything. So if you have any questions, I think I'm right, Steph, you're going to ask me them or relay them to me. Is that right?
If there's any questions, I can ask you.
There we go. Okay. So let's start, just turn this to around. Now, just to let you know, if we look at the back, all I've done here, you can use either epoxy glue or hot melt glue. Epoxy is a little bit stronger, and a little bit of scrap wood. In this case, it's a bit of oak, just glued onto the back. If you're using resin like I am here, you just need to abrade the surface before you glue it on. Otherwise, it'll just pop off again. If it's just timber, then no problem at all. I brought three tools specifically for this project to use. I've got a little 3/8 bowl gouge. I've got two types of skew, or two sizes of skew. So my first job, lathe speed down to 0, turn the lathe on, and we're going to turn that blank to round first. So quite a quick lathe speed on this one, up to nearly 2000. That's going to give less stress on the bit of timber. And I'm literally just skimming that outside edge. I need to come down to a full round, so I'm just checking. And because we're doing two, we'll just swap them over in a second. I'm usually batch turning these in quite a few at a time, so it's not unusual to be doing sort of 30 to 40 in a day. And I like that. I just find it a little bit more therapeutic than just messing around too much and swapping jaws over constantly. Now I'm just pulling the surface, so a little draw cut, and I'm going to create a little convex surface, a little radius surface. There we are. Not too extreme. I don't want it to have too much of a curve. And then, of course, just a little scrape with the skew. This is the signature skew here, and this is the large one of the signature skews. Okay, and I'm just using it literally as a negative rake scraper. It works beautifully for that. There we are. Let's stop and have a quick look at that one. We'll sand it. We'll get some finish on it. And then I'm going to get this up to camera in a second just to show off those lovely markings from that snakewood. It is a real gem of a timber. I've got some abrasive wax as well. I'm using the True Grit wax, but there's all sorts of abrasive waxes out there. And I'm also going to be going down quite fine with my abrasive as well. I'm going to bypass the course. Well, I say bypass the course. I'm still using 180. I'm going to turn the lathe speed down as well because I've chosen not to go with a dust extractor today, and I don't want to have too much dust in the air. It's going to be leaving a fairly fine finish, so I don't need to do a huge amount of sanding, if I'm honest, for that reason. So that was 180, 240. 320. 400. 600. Something we never use that much of, 800 grit abrasive on this timber. But some of these exotics, these really dense timbers, they need it. They need it. Otherwise, those little scratches will show up. It's almost like turning a bit of resin, actually turning this. And then I'm going to turn the lathe speed up, and we're going to go to a little bit of the abrasive wax. So True Grit, Yorkshire Grit, Cut and Polish. They're all good abrasive waxes. It's not the final finish. We've got a lot more to do to this in a minute. But that's our first stage. A little bit of tissue, wipe off the excess. We will buff these by the time we finish. But that's going to give us a good indication so far of what we're going to deal with, what we're going to end up with color-wise at the end. It's beautiful. Stunning. All right. Really, really nice. We'll get that on the overhead in a second. We'll get everything else up together, and we'll just show you exactly what that looks like. It's a real peach of a timber. Now let's go to the resin one. Slightly different now. You'll see a few ribbons flying in the air, I'm sure. You either love or hate resin. We have a phrase in the UK. It's a little bit like Marmite. Marmite is like it's almost like Vegemite, like a beef spread for sandwiches. So if you don't know what Marmite is, it's something that we get in the UK, and it's one of those tastes that you either love or hate. Resin's like that. You either love or hate working with it. I have my moments. Small pieces, love it. It's fine, but on big pieces, I'm not so keen. It's just one of those materials that it doesn't turn like timber, unfortunately. And of course, we've all been trained to turn with timber. Now, I'm not going to put my finger on that to test for round because I've created almost like a knife edge with that resin, and it will cut me if I touch it. So I'm just stopping the lathe and checking. There's a few little flats to take off there. Yes, Steph, you got a question?
Thanks for nearly forgetting my name then. You did well.
I did.
I've got a question here from Jack. He's asking, for applying an oil or friction polish, what grit sandpaper would you stop at?
Oil or friction polish. So again, it's going to depend on the timber, Jack. If it's a very dense timber, then I'd go a lot higher before friction polish. Oil's different because when you apply an oil finish, what I tend to do with an oil is wet sand it in. And I tend to wet sand with either a 320 or 400, so not going too fine. And the reason for that is if you wet sand with oil on a fine abrasive, it'll clog up immediately. So slow the lathe speed down so you don't get showered in oil firstly, and then sand with a 320 400 grit until it starts to dry and drag. Then burnish hard with shavings and buff with tissue. And that would be, I wouldn't go any higher than that. But with friction polish, before friction polish, you can go up to anything like the 6, the 800 even if it's a dense enough timber for it. All right. There we are. Stop and have a look. That's it. So we're down to nice round. So we're going to skim that surface again. We want that nice little radius. Now, the beauty of the things, the tools that I'm using, they will both work with the resin that we've got here in this scale. Because the skew acts as a negative rate scraper, and we all know that resin really likes being cut with a negative rake. There we are. That's a good finish there. I'm just going to take one more skim off. I don't like that little band of resin on the back. This is fine. That's supposed to be there, but that's not. So I'm just going to take one more skim off. Let's tidy that surface up first, though, with the skew. Good. Now, just a couple of cuts just to take away that last little bit of resin. I think that should be it. Let's double check. If it is, we can sand. Yeah, that's it. Good. Right, put that out of the way. Get our abrasive back. Now, if you're going to use resin blanks, hybrid blanks, just don't go too coarse. 120 grit would be far too much. So I'm starting at the 180. I'm going to slowly go through the grades. Don't press too hard. The resin will melt if it gets too hot. And then you get, it's like white soft lines in the resin. So I'm moving quickly. I'm not staying in one place too long. Allow the abrasive to do its job. So we're up to 320 already. And there's actually nothing stopping you from, with the resin blanks, just spritzing on a little bit of water. Slowly lay speed down, put a little bit of water on, help lubricate the cut. There we are, down 400 grit. $600. The resin is where it's needed. Now, there is a difference on how you treat it, depending on whether you go for opaque resin or transparent resin. So depending on what pigments you use, if you're going transparent, then you'll need to go a lot finer because otherwise the scratches will show. If it's opaque, not so much of a problem. You can stick at, say, 400-600 maybe. Those scratches don't really matter at all. They're not going to be seen. But on this, it's quite important. And is this the buffing at the end as well. So that's done. Let's go for our little bit of abrasive wax. Now, I'm actually applying the abrasive wax with this material called Webrax. And again, it's another abrasive applicator. It's abrasive down to about 1500, this grey colour. So let it do its job. A lot of people wipe abrasive waxes on and wipe them back off again. Remember what they're doing. They are abrasive. They're actually, you need to give them time to do their work. There we are. We'll stop and have a look at that. So I've used, on this resin here, I've used a clear and then I've swirled in a white. So I've made up 2 jars of resin basically. And so you can see you sort of got this this cloudiness within the blank. So that's the first one. Now what I thought I would do, that's the first process, sorry. What I thought I would do, rather than just get lots of chucks with lots of jaws on, I thought we'd just use the same chuck and I'll just swap the jaws over each time, just make life a little bit easier. That'll also show you how easy it is to change the chucks on the jaws. A lot of chucks, you don't get that that luxury. So we're going to look at that. I have another question as well coming up. Yes, Steph.
Yes, Andy Carr is asking, will you be coming to SWAT in August?
I really want to go back to SWAT. I haven't been invited, so no, unfortunately. And it's a busy old year this year. Well, I have said I'm not doing any overseas travel outside of the UK just this year, but next year, yes, absolutely. It looks like next year I've got lined up so far Philadelphia, so the Mid-Atlantic Symposium. I'd love to do SWAT again, but I just got to wait for the invitation. If you know anybody, pull some strings for me. That'd be awesome. Okay, I'm gonna say I'm gonna alienate myself now. But to be honest with you, SWAT was one of my most favourite symposiums. apart from physically being warm, I found it a really warm symposium to go to. Everybody was so lovely there. So yeah, I'd love to do it again. Let's have a look. So these are the wood plate jaws. Now I'm going to explain about these a minute. If I can get them on the chuck first. And then we'll look at what we're actually dealing with. So the wood plate bit is this. This is what the jaw is made up of. It literally is just a plate. You then attach whatever material you want on the surface of it. So I've used a bit of plywood, a good quality ply. This is a birch face ply, so for model makers. And the reason that I do that is if you buy a cheap ply, say a marine ply or something, it's full of voids as well as everything else, and you won't get as good a grip, where the model maker's ply is just completely dense, it's solid, no voids in it, and it's a lot easier to turn, less abrasive to the tools than cheaper plies. And also with the model maker's ply, you can buy them in smaller pieces. You don't have to buy a great big 8x4 sheet. Let's have a look at that. So look what I've done. This is specifically made for these pendants, or I've made this set for my pendants, but I've got another set that I use for coasters, another set that I've got really, really big for holding the rim of bowls when I want to take the feet off. And then I have another set that I just use for bespoke projects. So if I need something that I don't have a set of jaws for, I'll then make another set of wood plates to source it. So I've done that to fit these. So these are going to just grip that outside rim. They're sized to about 2.5 mil. So just, what's that? 3/16 ish. We're going to take off the waste first. So back with that bowl gouge. Don't be too impatient here. If you take too big a cut, remember we're only holding wood on wood. And you might find that actually that grip loses. Just gives a little bit. So another pull cut. We're just going to take that radius back again, and then we're back to sanding. Really pleasing little project, this one. Wonderful gifts. If you've made it to the point of selling your work, these are very sellable. They're not going to cost a fortune. Just nice and gentle. There we are. Then back to our abrasive. So 180, 240. You're getting the idea by now. Now, you can also choose not to put the offset in if you don't want to. I've seen these made with just simply a drilled hole in the top and then metal clasps, and that works fine. Slightly different look, but that works fine. We're right up to 400 already. Because we're dealing with side grain, it's not a big issue. There's no end grain here to worry about. So side grain, as you know, just performs a bit easier for us. It looks after us. There are 800 grit. And we'll do a little bit of the compound. Little bit of tissue. And let's have a quick look at that one. Just be aware of your dust extractor when you're doing things like this. Usually my dust extractor's right there, and the amount of things I've lost down it just because. But there we are. Lovely bit of snakewood. Gorgeous. So this is what I mean. You could just literally put a hole in one end, little clasp on that for your cord, and that works lovely. Let's go to the resin one though. So resin and walnut hybrid. Good and firm. Don't press too hard, or don't do the chuck up too tightly, because otherwise your plywood will delaminate. Certainly don't use things like MDF. MDF is not strong enough, and it will just crumble the minute you try to grip onto anything. Yes, Steph, question.
Yes, I've got a question here from Jay. He's asking, are the 114 and the 100 jaws interchangeable with the SK88 chuck?
They would be, but you won't have the movement. That's the only issue. When it comes to these, you're going to lose a little bit of your movement. So yes, in theory, you can put them on there. The mountain jaws would move in and out, and yeah, no problem. But it's just not enough movement for me.
Okay. Next question is Todd. When using the skew on the second side, what is the goal? Overall thickness, smoothness of the side? What are you aiming for?
So both really, overall thickness, smoothness, and the right radius as well. So I always leave myself a little bit of thickness when I'm casting or cutting them, so I can then trim down when I'm doing that second side. And I don't want the radius to be too domed either. I want it to be a nice subtle radius. That gives you a nice thin necklace when it's on. So those are the reasons really. Just going back to the previous question about the 88, the 100 and 114, absolutely no bother at all. I'm always swapping those around, the jaws for those. But it's the only issue when it comes to the 88 is the physical size. You know, that movement is a lot of that movement is gone. Okay, so that's the reason that I'm not. Like I say, in theory it will work, but I don't personally like doing it. There we are. Do the same here. If that happens, that wasn't supposed to. If that happens though, what sometimes you every now and again, what you need to do is just crisp up your jaw. There we are. Because over time, and I've had these probably now for about 5 years, they've done hundreds, excuse me, probably getting close to 1,000 pendants, and they get worn. So every now and again, I'll just do exactly what I've done there, crisp up that edge. That was good timing, actually. I didn't intend it to happen, but
When it came off a minute ago, I was changing camera angle, so
oh
you
right,
didn't actually see it
you
properly.
didn't see it come on. It did
You're
ping off.
lucky.
Yeah, so no, it did ping off. But yeah, just crisp up the inside of the jaw. That's the beauty of the jaws. You can just change them. When that goes, take off that bit of plywood, put another bit on. I haven't had to do that. Like I said, these have been going for about 5 years. Don't be impatient. Like I say here, take your time. That was me. That was nothing to do with the jaw. That was me being a bit heavy-handed there. I was pushing a bit hard. The other thing with resin, it can be quite abrasive. So let's just go to another smaller gouge a minute. It can be quite abrasive. Oh. I've hit the glue mark. Don't panic, everybody. Steph is in absolute hysterics behind the camera. There we are. Back to our skew. Just to tidy up that shape. So this is what we were saying. You know, I've gone oversized when this was cast. Now we're just cutting back to where we want it to be. Stop and have a check, see where we are before we start sanding again. That's nice. We got a good bit of clarity through there, so we'll be able to see through this when it's finished. We'll get some light behind it. So back with the abrasive and compound. So 180 first. $320. 400. 600. 800. Good. Right, a little bit of True Grit. Remember, let it do its work. Work it for a while. Bit of tissue. And then we can move on to the next jaw. Like I said, you don't have to. You don't have to put a radius on it. You could, if you wanted to, just have a disc. That's quite a nice piece of jewellery in itself. Just having a disc instead of that radius. But I'm just going to get a little bit of light behind this in a minute, if I can. You'll see. Let me just clean it off. It will be enhanced when we put the offset in there. But on the overhead a second, Steph, can they see this one? So you can see if I move. You can see my fingers behind it. Look. So there we go, some good clarity. Nice, pretty little piece. As well as showing off the timber, it's showing off the resin as well. Yes, Steph.
So we've got a question here from Roger. He's asking, did Axminster stop making the SK100 chuck?
Yes and no. Yes in one form, no in another. So I've got several 100s here. We've got an SK100. We've got a GK100. They both they're both the same thing, but they just have to almost like a transformer moment to change between the two. So if you've got a geared key, so a GK100, you can put have a shroud that goes over the gearing with your pinions on, and that will change it into your SK100. I made a fuddle of that, didn't I?
A shroud.
A shroud. That's what what is it called?
Backplate.
Backplate. All right then, backplate. Sorry.
And
That's enough. But don't worry, the jaws are not different. So your jaws are still the same, scroll is still the same, all that sort of thing. So you old jaws will fit new chucks and so on. That's the only difference.
Been redesigned.
It's redesigned, yeah. Yeah, just to confuse us.
I've got a question here from Jay asking, are the mounting jaws the same for the SK88 and the SK100?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. That's correct, isn't it?
They are, but you can get longer.
So if you've got if you've got a 114, that's when they change a little. And I've probably got a set of 114s up here somewhere. There we are. So the 114 mounting jaws are made a little longer. Okay, and they're made a little longer because you've got a longer body, obviously 114 instead of 100. So it just gives you a little bit more extra stability in the lateral movement. So that's the only difference. But these are the 100. They're also good for the 88 as well. Same ones. There we are. We can get rid of the wood plate jaws now for the minute. Put those back in my box. And we're going to go to the nylon jaws. Now, these nylon jaws are going to look a little bit strange because I've redesigned them. So my nylon jaws, or soft jaws is the other name, that's probably the one that looks most like the one you'll get out of the box, apart from this little nick here. But when I go to all the others, you'll see, and especially when I get them on the lathe in a moment, you'll see how very different they are. Excuse me. Let's get them in order. So you can see where my offset is going to be. So I'm going to explain exactly how we created that offset. No, it will do in a minute. 2, 1. Once it's on the chuck, it'll all go round. 3. So lining up my jaws, so number 1 slot. All the chucks come with that safety screw inside. So if you want to keep that safety screw in the chuck and not be able to undo the jaws right the way and swap them over, then you can. If you wanted to do what I'm doing and be able to swap the jaws quickly like this, then take that safety screw out. It's as simple as that. There we are. So if I close that right, you can see now, if we got that down the line one there, you can see where the offset is. Now, I've only offset that by 10 mils, so 3/8 of an inch. It looks a lot more, but that's all it is, just 3/8 out. And the way I've done this, rather than thinking about how to do it on the lathe, sort of like a chicken and egg scenario, is how we get the offset on the lathe to offset the pendants. I literally just clamped it in my drill press. So put it in the drill press. I used 3 sizes of Forstner bits. First of all, the large one at 50 mils, so 2 inches. Then we went down by about 1/4 of an inch to the next drill size, and then another 1/4 inch to the next one. That does several things. It gives us 3 positions for 3 sizes of pendant, but it also creates enough room for the radius that you've got on the pendants as well. So it's a bit of a 2 birds, 1 stone sort of scenario there. Now, I need to move all of this. Let's get this out of the way because we're going to drill first. I want to do a little safety hole up through the center before we start cleaning these up. And we're going to start with the easy one first. We're going to start, when I say easy, the easy material to work. So we're going to start with the snakewood first. So I spied a very small crack, so I'm going to make sure that's in the bit that's not going to take any stress. So down here. And the reason that we're drilling a hole is when I flip this over in a minute to do the other side, I need to line up where I've turned the front face when I turn it over because it's going to be hidden. So if I have a hole running all the way through, I can line that hole up and it worked perfectly. I'm using 8 mil, but that's not a significant size. It could be 6 mil, so it could be 1/4 inch, it could be 3/8. It doesn't make any difference to me. And I would preferably go with either a brad point, a lip and spur, a pen drill, anything like that, not a twist drill. If you use a twist drill, you'll probably explode through the back of the pendant and get a lot of breakout. You've probably experienced that if you ever made a pen, the first pen you made, if you've drilled it out with a twist drill, you can run into problems there where they explode through the end. But this sort of thing, these brad point drill bits work really, really well. Let's just turn that lathe speed down and then up. There we go. I haven't done a kiss test, so I'm just going to double check to make sure we're running true and in line. Yeah, we're good. And just gentle pressure. What you'll find with these drill bits, they'll cut their own little disc. So all the way through. go. It's just going to pop. There we are, all the way through. Back him out. While that's held in there, we can start thinking about the shape. You can see what I mean. That 3/8 offset is just enough. It's just enough to do the job. Now we're going to make sure the tool rest is just below that point, and we go back with our bowl gouges. So this is a little 3/8, remember, and create the radius. Let's go up in speed, and you don't need to do much. It's only a small amount of cutting here. And of course, I'm showing just one project, but I'm sure you're already thinking of many projects that you could do with something like this soft jaw, the wood plate jaws. They lend themselves to lots of things. I'm going to do one more cut there, and then we'll get the skew chisel in again. There we are. Skew chisel, just to bed and blend. Abrasive. Just use the corner. Get that corner in. Now, at the moment, it doesn't look as though the hole's very big, but I've gone past the halfway point of that blank, halfway through the thickness. So when we come in from the other side, that hole will very rapidly open up. So down to 320 now. $400. And you know where we're going now. 600, 800. A little bit of our abrasive compound. Abrasive wax, rather. Work it in. And buff it off. Turn it around. Now we can line up. So if we let's get rid of a few of those bits. Now look, where that drill bit come through, it's just cut a nice little hole. So there's no significant breakout there really. I'm just going to wipe off some of the wax that's on there. So you can see it's a fairly neat, hole there. Okay. But on the other side, we've got that lovely radius into it. So let's flip them over. Now I can use that hole and I can gauge where it should be. Conveniently, the holes within the jaws will line up. A little X marks the spot as well. There we go. I mean, the pendant can put up with a little bit of not exactly in the right place, but not too much. But that works perfectly to stop that happening. Just below center. Just below center with the tool rest. Now watch this hole start to open up quite rapidly. One more cut. There we are. Now, don't worry. You may find that certain softer timbers, you might see a little bit of fraying on the inside. Don't worry. That's not fraying of the timber at all. It's just the fibers. It's like a little wire edge when you're sharpening your tools. That wire edge is not part of the actual finished hole at all. The first touch you have with your first grade of abrasive, it disappears. There we go. So there we are, 240 next. $320. 400. 600. And lastly, 800. There we are, a little bit of abrasive compound. I keep saying compound, abrasive wax. I would say once you've got the kit here, so there's nothing stopping you. If you wanted to use 2 sets of nylon jaws, soft jaws, instead of using a set of wood plate jaws and nylon jaws, you could. You could use 2 sets of wood plate jaws to do what I'm doing here with the nylon jaws as well. So I'm using both to show you the difference, but you could just go down your favorite jaw line, whichever. Let's just take that one off, put that one out of the way just for the moment, and we'll do the resin one. Before you polish later on, just clean off any of that abrasive wax, because that won't do your polishing, your final polishing, any favors. So get rid of that. Already you can see the shape that we're getting there. So we've got that lovely radius, good size hole in the middle, but showing off that wonderful grain in the timber. Yes, Steph.
Yes, I've got a question here. It says, what can I use to remove hardened oils and sprays to clean my chucks and jaws?
So hard oils and spray. I use a couple of things actually. If it's not too bad, I'll use something like methylated spirits. If it's really bad, then I tend to go with cellulose thinners, the thinners of any thoughts. Just be any sort, but just be careful with thinners, because thinners will take paint off as well, so off your lathes and things like that. So that would be my favorite. But we use a product over here made by a company called Libron, called Libnet, which is specifically for that. It's a it gets off grease and all those sorts of things. I have heard people use raw petrol, but I'd be careful with that. Obviously, you know, set your workshop alight.
Maybe not something to recommend.
No, I don't know. I've never tried it. Wouldn't recommend it. But Libnet, if you get something like that, but there are, you know, that's a purpose-made product. But like I said, methylated spirits works well. Cellulose thinners works well. I would probably not get too much of it on your hands though. Methylated spirits, I guess, isn't too bad, but cellulose not great for your fingers. What I've done here is the resin is the weaker area. So if I make a very thin area, let's say here, if I have that as resin, it could be quite weak. It could break quite easily. So I'm keeping it on the timber side for the offset hole. So we're going to drill that hole through first.
Looks like a snowy mountain range.
There you go. That's what we'll snowy mountain range pendant. And we're through. That can come out. I can take the drill bit out. We can take the chuck away. And we can start thinking about shape. So don't be greedy. Small cuts all you need. Not actually that much timber to come off. And remember what I said, we are cutting way past the halfway point. So don't worry about the size of that hole at this stage. I don't think I need the skew there. That went in really quite nicely. So 180 grit. I'm just going to stop the lathe and see if I've made it out to the resin. Yes, I have, look. So I just need to be a little bit cautious now. Wherever I touch the 180 grit, I need to make sure I fully sanded that back with the other grades as well. Otherwise, you'll find offset sanding marks from the coarser abrasives. So 320. $400. 600. 800. Wax. Tissue. Pretty bit of timber. Yeah, it was only walnut sap, but there's quite a lot of going on with it as well. A lot of ripples going into that. See, now this hole's going to open up quite a long way, so I'll just be aware of that. We might stop the lathe before, just to double check before we finish the turning of this one. And you tighten up. I've said this before. You've seen it in my demos. Tighten up just before you hear, and stop just before you hear the first crack. That is a thing. That's not just a joke. It is a thing. You know that point, because most of us have gone past it at some point in our turning lives, where you've gone too far and you've crushed fibers, or you've exploded a bowl because you've just expanded too far. But it's just a resistance you get to, if you go any further, you've gone too far. There we are. Let's just stop and have a look, just to see if I've gone far enough. I think we have. I don't think we'll risk going any further on that one. So let's go back through the grades. You find you get yourself into a little rhythm. If you're going to do one, you may as well do several. And in terms of casting these, I'll cast 6 at a time in one tray, but I'll do multiple trays. And these are cast in a pressure pot. The trays I use are takeaway trays. It's my excuse for eating lots of takeaways. The little silver trays that you get. And I can get 3 by 2, so I can get 6 blanks in each tray. That hole's really opened up, so I'm glad I stopped where I did. There we are, 400. Question, yes.
Yeah, so we've got a question. Can you do this with the eccentric spiraling chuck?
Not really. Well, I'd say not really. You probably could, but you'd need to have some way of holding them, because that you have to attach via hot melt glue or screws, where you can see these are quite delicate pieces. So unless there was a way of mounting a chuck on it, or even a tiny chuck to do that, then not really.
Next question.
Yep.
What grit is the abrasive wax equivalent to?
Oh, now you're asking me something. This is not the fine one. So both Yorkshire grit and True grit do like a general duty one, and the very fine cutting compound. This is the regular one, so it's not the very fine one. I don't know. Well, that's a 1500 grit applicator pad there. Doesn't give me an equivalent here, but it's certainly far more, far finer than the papers that I've got. When I'm using it on the resin, it doesn't leave scratches. Where even if I go to 1200 grit, 1500 grit, I'll see scratches. So it doesn't do that. So we got to be getting up there. I reckon probably around about 2 to 2,500 on the regular one. I would have thought. Yes, Steph.
And then another one asking the Libron product that you suggested for
Yes.
chuck cleaning. How do you spell it?
Well, they call it net. Well, okay. The modern name for it is wax and polish remover. We used to know it as Libnet. So Steph has just brought a tin over for me to read out. So
They've
yes,
made it easier for everyone.
yeah, wax polish remover, wax and polish remover. Right, there we are. Remember what I said? Just wipe away any residue of that abrasive wax. There we are, and now we can do our final polish. So another nice little hole on that one. Let's polish them up. We're almost there. Almost there. I'm going to get some finished ones out. Show you how we finish them. So let's get rid of the jaws. Take those away. We're just going to go back with regular jaws now. So in fact, I will just change the chuck for this just to make our lives a bit easier. Now I've taken the jaws off. Put that one out the way. Regular C jaws. If you've got a 114 100 or even an 88 yaw, I'm sure you'll be accustomed to the C jaws. I use just a little polishing mop pigtail in there. And we're going to use a couple of compounds. So the first one, for the resin, I'm going to use a buff. I use this on resin. This is a first stage plastics compound. I always polish it around about 1500 revs on the polishing mops. There we go. Let's get that out of the way. A little bit of resin. The other thing with this, sorry, a little bit of compound. This compound also copes with the paler timbers as well. So we're going to make sure you hold the piece nice and strongly. Don't stay too long on the resin, otherwise you'll melt it. Good grip. Make sure you put your dust extractor nozzle out the way. I only talk for experience. I've lost more of these dust extractors than I'd like to say. There we are. That's the compound. So an abrasive compound, that is. So that gives us again another sanding, I guess. That's the first one. Now on the darker timber there, I'm going to go for a Tripoli or Tripomax. Brass, copper, first stage plastics, abrasive. Same thing. Good thing about all of these, or this way of finishing, you don't get polish marks. There's no rotational marks from the lathe. There we go. So that gives us a really nice finish already. So that's a really smooth finish. What we want to do though is buff it. Now we've applied the polish, we want to apply a wax. In this case, I'm going to go straight to Carnauba, and we're going to apply the Carnauba with a loose leaf. So though the other two mops for the polish were stitched, this is a loose leaf mop. And again, little and often. The difference between that and the polish is, let me show the camera that. Can you see the glint on that once you've got that wax on? So that's the wax. This is just the polish here. So there's a huge difference. So again, there we are. That's the thing when it's finished. Look at that lovely shine. And the lovely markings that are on there as well. That snake was really shining beautifully. Both sides. There we are. I'll just pop that one to one side whilst we do the other. A little bit more wax and pure carnauba. Get your outside edge, of course. The outside edge can just grip onto some of the excess waxes, so make sure you give that a good buff. There we go. Stop the lathe. I'll just get them both out for you to see, and we're just going to pop one of them in a little box. But there we are. Lovely couple of very different looking pendants, those two. And what I do with those next, let me just pop those down while I go. I'm just going to grab a box for you. Just to present them. I tend to buy, no, that one's got one in already. I tend to buy pre-made chain or cord. You can buy them at many different lengths, and these things have the the ends here, so you can adjust when you're wearing them. And fairly simply, let's go with this one. Try and keep on camera. Sorry, guys. Just thread it through. Okay. And that'll sit in the box. Sorry, I'm being directed and I'm not looking. That'll sit in the box, ready for you to sell or give away. Let's get the other one out so we can see that one. And there we are. Okay, yeah, questions. Good time for questions.
Not so much a question, but a statement from Jay. He just wanted to say thank you for all of the joy you've provided me over the years. You've earned a fishing trip.
Hey,
Fishing. So
yeah, very much. I've never been bass fishing. So yeah, there's one big mouth bass. I've never been bass fishing. Been a Bass Pro lots of times, but I've never been bass fishing. There we are. Any more questions? We're good. All good. Excellent. Well, look, guys, I hope you'd like that, and thank you for the Woodturning Store for giving me the opportunity to demonstrate for you as well. That's the other thing. There's in terms of the jaws, I have a certain amount of jaws that I go to all the time. The OD112s are one of them. Probably one of the top four of the jaws I'm permanently using. But the wood plate jaws and the nylon jaws, they just solve problems for me. You're always going to get those projects that you haven't got a jaw to fit, so you have to make something work. Pendants was one of them. Remember how we got the offset? So that was in a drill press. So 3 different sizes of Forstner bit to create that nice belly in the jaws. Guys, I hope you really enjoyed that. I certainly have. And until next time, I'll see you again. Thank you for coming by.